When you discovered the law of attraction, you started to believe anything was possible. Life got better, much better. Now you want more, but it's not working. That's where the Manifest It Now show comes in. If you've been waiting for someone who can teach you the practical application to manifest quicker and easier while having more, turn the volume up, because the dynamic duo, Cassie Parks and Ginny Gain, are ready to teach you how to live the law of attraction like they do. It's time to laugh and learn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Manifest It Now. I'm here with Cassie Parks.
And I'm here with Ginny Gain.
And our episode today, we're going to talk about how to move through resistance.
Yes.
I'm sure everyone wants to know this. It's a thing. And do you use this term with your clients, Cass, like resistance? I know in the past you haven't. I know I do all the time.
I don't use, when you were saying it, I was like, oh, I don't use this term as much anymore. Yeah. My clients use it because they pick it up from like other stuff. But I don't, and I think it's mostly because I don't see it as like, it is resistance. It's something we're pushing against, but often I just see it as the thing to grow through. So I think that's why maybe I don't use it as much. And they bring it up though. It's not like, I totally get it. And which is why I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. But first, what else are you excited about?
I feel like that was, what's the word? Loaded.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. I'm excited about life and just excited. This is probably the same thing I said last week, but I live in my dream house and getting to share it with more than one person that lives here, but also my life, getting it to share it with everybody. My cousin just texted me that she'll be in town next week, and I'm like, great, come over to the new house and we'll have lunch here and you get to see it. And so, just, I don't know.
I tried to tell Cassie that there was a lot going on and she liked to have activity at her house and that it was busy. And she's like, what are you talking about? It's not busy. There's not things going on. There was a pool party and then a workshop and then an event and then we were there and then other people were there. And I'm like, wow, you must really like this. She's like, oh no, it's not normally like this.
I mean, it's not right? My cousin's just going to come on the way to the airport. I don't know. I think it's just we have different levels of
That is true.
I
got to share something funny just because it's hilarious. So talking about introverts and extroverts, I'm totally more an introvert, and my brother is the opposite of me, loves people around. And he has been, he's been living since I moved out with just on his own for the past year. And he was realizing, he's like, it was great to have space and I love that. He's like, but I realized even more, I really love to have people around me, and I like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I get that. And he's like, Jen, just imagine if you had to live with a house full of people all year. He's like, that's what it's like for me being alone for a year. And I'm like, oh, that's a great analogy of that.
It is a great analogy. Yeah.
Because I would not appreciate that. I would not enjoy that.
I would not enjoy having a house full of people all the time.
Yeah.
What are you excited about?
I'm really excited about being. So, and just living life. This morning, Lisa and I were taking a walk, and I just said, I was like, I feel like I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And it's such an amazing feeling. And it was kind of reminiscent of when I was a kid and there was no responsibilities. And it was that feeling of just, I'm here to live. I'm not here to get anything done or do anything or get somewhere. It's just oh, there's so much richness in this life just by being here and being present. So that feels totally amazing to be at that place.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of, leading into our topic, there's lots of resistance to get through, to get to this place. And I know there'll be lots more. So that's why it's powerful to talk about this, to be able to move through the resistance with ease and with trust. So, so how would you let's just start by defining, because we kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning, defining what it is to you, what it means to you, Cass.
Resistance is the thing that you're pushing against. It's the thing that's keeping you sort of from moving forward or taking the action you know you need to take. And that's not that action is not like the thing you're supposed to do. It's the action that like inside you're like, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. Right.
Yeah.
And so often, like, it's just the thing. I think it's the thing you're pushing against instead of walking into.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
When I describe resistance, I would say it's like energetic tension.
I like that.
Because I feel like I'm very visual and I like see things. So when I see resistance, it's like a more denser energy that isn't like just free flowing and allowing. And so that's how I describe it. And I think it can come about in a couple ways. Like resistance exists, as we know, generally because of how we're looking at something or like the story we're telling about it. So if we want to create a successful business and then we have the story that's going to be hard, that's going to create resistance within us. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it just makes me think, I think there's two definitions of resistance, which is in coaching processes, I've often found like people come with multiple definitions of the same thing or different people come with different definitions. And so like that creates resistance. And for me, that's, I guess it is like resistance, right? It's like we're resisting something because it doesn't match up to what we want, right? It goes to that tension. Yeah. So that's like one type, I would say.
But it all comes from how we're looking at it, though. Like our idea of what is real, our perception, our perspective is the thing that creates resistance. It's not that it actually in reality exists. It's just because you guys know we create our reality by how we're looking at things. And like our beliefs. And so it's how you're perceiving, like the reality or the truth you're perceiving to be is what's going to create that resistance. So for example, I had this come up with one of my clients. Last week we talked about it, and there was something there was a solution she needed for her driveway, needed to fix her driveway. And we talked about different things, and she was feeling stuck and frustrated and all these different stories around why it couldn't happen. And then kind of later in the conversation, it came up. She's like, well, I could do this. I could ask for help in this one way, but it really doesn't feel good to me. Like there was resistance there. Because of, she's like, if I go that path, it means this and it means this and this could happen. So all of those stories she was telling about that possible solution, she was holding herself back from actually like taking that action because of what she thought might happen, right? So she felt that resistance.
Yeah, I get that. It comes up a lot. Not a lot, actually. I'm going to change that story because it's not actually true. It comes up sometimes when my clients don't fully embrace the things that they've seen about their future self. It comes up when they're too they get stuck in this reality, or they get stuck in something that someone said in their current self, or they're taking on someone else's stuff instead of fully like stepping into their future self.
Yeah. And I think some of the times, or one of the reasons why Cass and I wanted to talk about this is because in a lot of the traditional law of attraction teachings, it's like if something doesn't feel good or if you feel resistance, move away from it, ignore it, revert, change your focus. And Cass and I actually both believe the opposite of that.
Yeah, hugely.
Hugely, yeah. And so we are more of like, oh, it's guiding you. Like what you are resisting is kind of informing you, giving you information about where you can open, where you can release, how you can retell this story so that it's a vibrational opening or allowing so that things can flow. And the resistance you're feeling is like, hey, you can release resistance in this area so that you can get the thing you want.
Yeah. And I would add to it, like, it's the opportunity to make choices, like, and to step into often.
Yeah.
In addition to what you were saying. And it's so often that tension is created because we don't make a choice to go all into something, or when we just don't make the choice that, like, to choose. We stay in the middle. We stay sort of straddling the line, right? Or we're not stepping
I love
in.
that.
Yeah. Or like you said, like, we're just not open to allowing it. We're still holding on. We haven't made the choice to allow, or we aren't opening to allow. We're still making the choice to, like, think we can control the how, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love what you said before, how you talk about this is that the solution is on the other side of the resistance. So it was so with this same example, it was a few days later and she posted in our group and she said, okay, so I finally like got over that thing and I did this action and this came out of it and this came out of it and this came out of it. And now there's so many things falling into place because she was willing to go, move through the thing that she was resisting. And the answer was on the other side. And it didn't mean that like she had to force herself through that action. I want to talk about that a little bit, but it didn't mean the final answer or solution was directly on the other side. But what happens when you are open to moving through that or moving through that resistance is you open to the next step or the next idea. And this is so like opening your energy is like opening to the flow and letting the universe deliver you the next best thing. And it can only deliver you one thing at a time, And so, I just wanted to make that point that it's not like do this one thing, then the final solution's on the other side. Bada bing, bada boom.
Right. Because often what you're resisting is just the moving forward, right?
Yes.
It's like whatever that thing is the thing that's moving you forward. And so you're resisting that forward movement, and making it like, and a lot of times so much bigger. Like, it's like, it's when you get in your head and that adds to resistance and the tension you talked about is like, if you make up a story about moving forward and how big it is and what's going to happen next and all this stuff, when it's just like, just move through it. Just make the decision.
That is a really important thing to highlight is that we will naturally experience resistance in our life in the moment. But when how we build to it and add to it, why it gets so strong, it seems overcomable, is because then we tell stories about it and we're adding momentum to that resistance, like either in thinking about the future, thinking about the past, we're doing that in our head. That's why like we self-create so much of the resistance. And instead, if we just dealt with it in the moment, then it would have been so much easier to move through.
And I think we talked a little bit about this last week, is so often people come to the how. This is where, right? Like, how do I move through it? How do I do this? And then it's like, well, what do I do? It's like, you, again, like it comes back so often for me to like making a choice.
Yeah.
Right? Because when there's choice, there's clarity. We've talked about this before. And so in clarity, there can't be resistance.
Yeah.
And so any choice that's clear releases resistance and opens that space for what is on the other side.
Absolutely.
Even if, and there's no wrong choice, but even if by technical terms, it's the wrong choice, like, that because then like once the choice is made, the clarity is, there's no resistance, like you can even see clearly and you can change your mind. You can choose differently. I don't think it's changing your mind. It's just you can make another choice.
Yeah. I love this concept of highlighting that with choices comes clarity. And either way, you are going to get clarity when you make a choice. And when you deliberately bring that intention and that just that deliberateness into like, I'm the one making this choice. I'm not being forced into this. I don't have to make this, but like I'm choosing to make this choice one way or the other, and in order to gain clarity. And then from there, I will have more information and I can make a different, whether it's a different choice or another choice. Maybe not different. I like another, because you're not ever moving backwards. You're just always moving forwards.
Mm-hmm. And it's just another choice. And so often that resistance is to making a choice, right? And it's all the stories that you talked about. Like, is it wrong? Is this the right thing to do? Is this? And a lot of times I would say people don't see it as a choice.
Yes.
Right? They don't even get to that place where, but if you ask yourself, like, what's the choice here?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're going to get even clarity in that, in like, oh, like, because so often the question that people ask is, why am I resisting? So what happens is your brain goes and finds all these reasons why you're resisting, which are generally reasons to be scared of moving forward. Like if we categorize them, that is what your brain is coming up with, reasons to be scared of moving forward. And as long as you keep asking that question, why do I keep resisting it? And any form of that's not even question, but like, oh, I got to figure out how to get through this resistance. Oh, I'm resisting this. Oh, I know this is resistance, but right?
Yeah.
Like you're just, your brain is finding information to confirm that. And instead of like, why am I here? It's, what is the choice? Because your brain's going to like go through the file and be like, A or B, that's the choice, right? Or A, B, C, or D, right? There might be more than two choices, and you get to choose in that moment. And so even just asking yourself, what is the choice here? What do I need to choose between? Or what are my options?
Yes.
Like, is different than telling this story and building that momentum of more resistance, because that happens all the more you try to get through resistance instead of move through resistance, the worse resistance gets.
Yeah, totally. Because you're focused on the thing that you don't want, which is resistance. So I love that question, Cass, of like, okay, I feel resistance here. Great. What are my options? What are my choices here? So you immediately go into your power. And then instead of how do I get overcome this resistance, asking the question of more of like, one of my favorite questions to ask is like, what is this showing me? Or what is this bringing up? What opportunity is here for me to grow through with this? Because I know if I'm feeling resistance about something, I know it's an opportunity. One of the examples I had in the past couple months, I think I might have shared this, I don't remember, is I was feeling, or in the past, I felt like jealous, but maybe not jealous, but maybe jealous of very of like very successful, leaders out there in more of like the spiritual world. And I'm like, man, and I could catch myself having that feeling of like, oh, how come they're so successful? It looks so easy, going down that path. And I was very aware. I'm like, oh, that's like some resistance for you. And immediately I was like, oh, this is your place to grow. And as soon as you take that perspective, like you open up to like, how is this for me? How can this help me expand and me become more of who I want to be? Because I don't want to be that, I want to be the person who celebrates everybody's successes and everybody's abundant. And so that in those moments is your opportunity to be able to step up into that and to be able, and as soon as you're not pushing against what you don't want, the path of becoming that person takes care of itself. Like it'll give you another little opportunity. Like the universe will bring you another little idea, but it can't come if you're just focused on how do I get over this resistance kind of thing.
Right. And I want to explain, because the visual kind of came to me, like people use terms like, how do I get through resistance? How do I get over resistance? How do I do this? Well, those questions don't work, like for the reasons that we've talked about, but they also, because like you said, it's just the energetic tension. There is no hurdle. Like there is no like literal log to climb over, or there's no tunnel to actually go through. And so when we talk about it in those terms, we're your brain is looking for that. You're creating that. Like, let me look how to like, in a way, like go through the tunnel and sort of like not have to deal with the outside of what's outside the tunnel. Or like, how do I step over that log? Like, you're looking to create this elaborate plan, right? Like, this is all sort of happening behind the scenes in your brain when you're talking about it like this, but and this is how a lot of people talk about it. How do I get over that? Right. And so it's almost like your brain is like, wants to create a plan because like, okay, well, how do we get over like a big boulder? Like, oh, we could stack some stuff up. We could use a rope. Like, so it's coming up with all of these different possibilities to solve it, but it's energetic. And the energetic tension bursts as soon as there's a decision.
I love that analogy. It bursts. Totally release.
It bursts because it's not anything that you can go through or you can get over, right? Or you can fix.
Or you can fix it. You can't fix resistance. Just make a choice.
Nah. Just make a choice.
Yeah.
And that like bursting like if you're visual like I am, like it just, I can see it bursting and then it's wide open to see everything else that's possible and to just, keep choosing and keep walking forward.
Yeah. It makes me think of when you have an inner purpose, like your inner being, but your inner purpose is always calling you. It's always calling you to more, and it's calling you to more of what you want, and you being the best version of yourself in this world. And if you're not making that choice to follow that, that's when you feel this like inner battle and this inner resistance within you. And so that it can be as simple as asking that question, like, what's my choice here? And then making a choice to help release that resistance within you. And then keep doing that process. And that is the process that's going to get you closer to the external ultimate thing that you want, but the internal state of freedom. I mean, that's what we're all after. And if you guys haven't figured it out already, freedom doesn't come from being able to have the lifestyle, have like, I can work whenever I want, where I want, to make this much money, I'm so in love. Like, it doesn't come from that. People have all this stuff and they still don't feel free. That feeling that you're after, it comes from inside you. And it comes from this process of knowing I'm kind of in control of how I feel. So.
Absolutely. And I wanted to highlight something for some of our, people who've been working this for a while and have been doing this. Like, the more you open to who you are, what you want, in my work, your future self, the more tension is created when you don't follow through.
Yes. So true.
So like when you open these big doors and portals of opportunity and you don't follow through, you like stay in that resistance, right? You don't own the choices that the way I would say it, your future self would make, or you don't own her path, right? It gets a lot worse. Like it is not a fun place to be, and it's a form of resistance, right? But then it becomes like habit and gets bigger, and it's super not fun.
Yeah. And I want to explain vibrationally what's happening there, because when you spend time in what's possible and what you want and that future self and all of that goodness, and you're in alignment with that, you're adding energy there, you're adding vibration. And because that vibration is now stronger when you're not on that frequency, you're farther from that. It's going to it feels worse because vibrationally you're farther from that place. So that's why it feels so awful. Do you want to talk, Cass, for a second about resistance coming from fear?
Yes, I do. And I always, fear is the same way. We make up a lot of stories about what we might be afraid of, which I think comes because when we're younger, we know, right? Mm-hmm. Even if Like Jenny and I watched Monsters, Inc. the other day. And Lisa, and so it was family movie night. And, you're afraid that there's a monster in the closet, even if it's not real when you're a kid, but you can articulate it, right? Mm-hmm. What are you afraid of? Like when we're younger, we know, right? I'm afraid there's a monster in my bed. I'm afraid there's a monster in my closet. I'm afraid that there's going to be something scary when the lights aren't on, right? And as we grow up, often those things become less tangible because we know logically there's not a monster in the closet, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we're feeling fear, we don't know what it is. And for me, I believe wholeheartedly, we don't often fear specific things. We fear the unknown because that's mm-hmm. the way we're wired. Like our brain, our primitive brain's job is to keep us safe. And so when our brain doesn't know, well, what if you make this choice? Like, what's going to happen? What's our life going to look like if we do have $1 million? Like, we can survive, on 70,000. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like at $1 million. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Even though that's good, we're afraid of that unknown because that's our brain's job. It's simple. It's just our brain's job. And mm-hmm. so often when we give into that, like we stay in resistance because we're trying to figure out what we're afraid of.
Yeah.
And that just keeps resistance going because you'll always find an answer when you say, what am I afraid of? Like, why am I afraid to move forward? Why am I the same? Why am I resisting this? Why am I afraid of this? You're always going to get an answer.
Mm-hmm. And I think this comes up a lot too, or it's obvious in relationships. Like I know for myself personally, every time when Cass was talking about the more you ask for what you want, the more uncomfortable it feels when you're not making choices along that path. So, yeah. I mean, I think of everything I've asked for in a relationship. And then when I'm when I was in a relationship that I knew wasn't everything I wanted, the longer I tried to stay in that, the more resistance I felt. And it got worse and worse until I would basically give in to what I really wanted. And that's something you learn through practice, but that's an example of that. And I think another way it comes up in relationships, same thing in terms of your resistance is going to give you information about where you need to grow. And so I have a client, it came up this morning and, she wants to create this dream relationship and she's put some amazing things in that vortex. She knows what she wants. And now when she's dating this guy and it comes up and she's feeling the old fears come up, right? And she's like, I feel this feeling. Mm-hmm. It's so uncomfortable. And traditionally, law of attraction is like, oh, it doesn't feel good. Don't go there.
Right?
And I'm like,
no.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm like, I am so excited for you. This is your opportunity. Like, this is a fear that's been kind of holding you back. But I don't like that term, but getting in your way of experiencing everything you want. And this is your opportunity. Like in this moment, we don't have the opportunity to move through these things unless it comes up and we're feeling it like this. And so I get really excited now, even though in my own life, if I feel resistance and it's uncomfortable, there's a part of me that gets excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity to grow to my next level. And I love that. And so don't be I have another example too of someone who was dealing with like an illness and the fear was coming up like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go to this doctor. I don't want to hear what she has to say. So scared. And the fear is real. In those moments, that fear is real. That resistance is real. And it is giving you information though, because in both of these examples, the women like leaned into it, were present with it, let it be. And that is the process of growing and allowing and practicing allowing. And that's what's going to like transfer into the rest of your life in becoming that person is taking advantage of those opportunities where it's real. It's not discounting that it's not real. And it's like letting that resistance be your teacher, I think is one of the best ways to look at this and open up to how it's going to be a positive in your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it's such the teacher.
Yeah.
And what you want is on the other side of that resistance. Like so much of it is on the other side. Yeah.
So I think it's a great way to wrap up with kind of, even if there's one thing you take away from this, it's that resistance is a good thing, open to the resistance of why it's there and how you can open to it, lean into it, and move through that to get to the solution that you want.
Absolutely. How can you burst that tension bubble?
Yes. So good. And if you're in our Facebook Manifest It Now podcast community, share some examples, share what you're taking away from this episode and maybe how you're bursting through abundance, because we'd love to help create that community and know that there's tons of people out there doing this. All right. Well, we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Go be awesome.
Thank you for joining us on the Manifest It Now show, where you learn how to leverage the law of attraction to manifest your dreams. Now that you're inspired, share the love and review us on iTunes. While you're there, remember to subscribe.